Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be reading some Kant, if I can just get it up on my screen. Yes, here we have it. So this is what we're going to be reading. It is the Prolegomena, preamble on the peculiarities of all metaphysical cognition. One of the sources of metaphysics. If it becomes desirable to formulate any cognition as a science, it will be necessary first to determine accurately those peculiar features which no other science has in common with it, constituting its characteristic. Otherwise, the boundaries of all science become confused, and none of them can be treated thoroughly according to its nature. The characteristic of a science may consist of a simple difference of object, or of the source of cognition, or of the kind of cognition, or perhaps all three conjointly. On this, therefore, depends the idea of a possible science and its territory. First as concerns the source of metaphysical cognition. Its very concept implies that they cannot be empirical. Its principle, including not only its maxims, but its basic notions, must never be derived from experience. It must not be physical, but metaphysical knowledge, vis-a-vis knowledge lying beyond experience. It cannot therefore have for its basis neither external experience, which is the source of physics proper, nor internal, which is the basis of empirical psychology. It is therefore a priori knowledge, coming from pure understanding and pure reason. But so far, metaphysics would not be distinguishable from pure mathematics. It must therefore be called pure physical cognition, philosophical cognition. And for the meaning of this term, I refer to the critique of pure reason, where the distinction between these two employments of the reason is sufficiently explained, so far concerning the source of metaphysical cognition. 2. Concerning the kind of cognition which can alone be called metaphysical. Of the distinction between analytic and synthetical judgments in general, the peculiarity of its source demands that metaphysical cognition must consist of nothing but a priori judgments. But whatever be their origin or their logical form, there is a distinction in judgments as to their content, according to which they are either merely explicative, adding nothing to the content of the cognition, or expansive, increasing the given cognition. The former may be called analytical, and the latter synthetical judgments. So they're add nothing to the content of the cognition, or expansive. The former are analytical, as they add nothing, and the latter are expansive, they're synthetical. Analytical judgments express nothing in the predicate, but what has already been actually taught in the concept of the subject, though not so distinctly or with the same full consciousness. When I say, quote, all bodies are extended, I have not amplified in the least my concept of body, but have only analyzed it as extension was really thought to belong to the concept before the judgment was made, though it was not expressed. This judgment is therefore analytical. On the contrary, this judgment, all bodies have weight, contains in its predicate something not actual thought in the general concept of the body. It amplifies my knowledge by adding something to my concept, and must therefore be called synthetical. The common principle of all analytical judgments is the law of contradiction. All analytical judgments depend wholly on the law of contradiction, and are in their nature a priori cognitions, whether the concepts that supply them with matter be empirical or not. For the predicate of an affirmative analytical judgment is already contained in the concept of the subject, of which it cannot be denied without contradiction. In the same way, it opposes is necessarily denied of the subject in an analytical, but negative judgment by the same law of contradiction. Such is the nature of the judgment: all bodies are extended, and no bodies are unextended. For this very reason, all analytical judgments are a priori, even when the concepts are empirical. As, for example, gold is a yellow metal. For to know this, I require no experience beyond my concept of gold as a yellow metal. It is, in fact, this very concept, and I need only analyze it without looking beyond anywhere else. Synthetical judgments require a different principle from the law of contradiction. There are synthetical a posteriori judgments of empirical origin, but there are also others which are proved to be certain a priori, and which spring from pure understanding and reason. Yet they both agree in this, that they cannot possibly spring from the principle of analysis, vis-a-vis the law of contradiction. Alone they require a quite different principle, though from whatever they may be deduced, they must be subject to the law of contradiction, which must never be violated, even though everything cannot be deduced from it. I shall first classify synthetical judgments. Empirical judgments are always synthetical, for it would be absurd to base an analytical judgment on experience, as our concept suffuses for the purpose without requiring any testimony from experience. The body is extended as a judgment established a priori and not an empirical judgment. For before appealing to experience, we already have all the conditions of the judgment in the concept, from which we have but to elicit the predicate according to the law of contradiction, and thereby to become conscious of the necessity of the judgment, which experience could not even teach us. Mathematical judgments are synthetical. This fact seems to have hitherto escaped the observation. So this is very, very interesting. So in B, so what we've done so far is A, the distinction between the analytic and synthetical judgments, okay? And in B, Kant here is saying that the common principle of all analytical judgments is the law of non-contradiction. So for example, if I deny, let's say that take the statement bachelors are bachelors. By definition, bachelors are unmarried men, okay? We don't need to look at something, let's say, for example, whales. By definition, whales live in water. Okay, if you take a whale out of water for a certain amount of time, for an extended amount of time, you have no water around it at all, it will die. Okay, so there's certain analytical statements that if you deny them, you end up in a contradiction. Somebody cannot be alive and dead at the same time. So if somebody says to you, well, I'm a bachelor, but I'm married, well, there's something going on there. It's not definitively correct. For the predicate of the affirmative analytical judgment is already contained within the concept of the subject, of which it cannot be denied without contradiction. Okay. So we have that now. Then we have C, synthetical judgments require different principle from the law of contradiction. Okay. So they both agree on this, that they cannot possibly spring from the principle of analysis, the law of contradiction alone. They require a quite different principle, though from whatever they may be deduced, they must be subject to the law of contradiction. For it would be absurd to base an analytical judgment on experience, as our concept suffices for the purposes without requiring any testimony from experience. That body is extended as a judgment established a priori and not an empirical judgment. For before appealing to experience, we already have all the conditions of the judgment in the concept, from which we have but to elicit the predicate according to the law of contradiction, and thereby to become conscious of the necessity of the judgment. which experience could not even teach us. So empirical judgments are always synthetical. It would be absurd to base an analytical judgment such as bachelor's on experience. For as our concept is enough for the purpose without requiring any testimony from experience. The body is extended is a judgment established a priori and not empirical judgment. Before appealing to experience, we already have the conditions of the judgment in the concept from which we have but to elicit the predicate according to the law of contradiction. Okay. Now, this is where the disagreement is going to start coming in. Hume doesn't believe that mathematics are synthetical. This fact seems hitherto to have altogether escaped the observation of those who have analyzed human reason. It even seems directly opposed to other conjectures, though incontestably certain, and most important in its consequence. For as it was found, the conclusions of mathematicians all proceed according to the law of non-contradiction, as demanded by all apodictic certainty, men persuaded themselves the fundamental principles were known from the same law. This was a great mistake. For a synthetical proposition can be indeed comprehended according to the law of non-contradiction, but only by presupposing another synthetical proposition from which it follows, but never in itself. So there's a distinction here that the conclusions of mathematicians all proceed according to the principle of non-contradiction. But the fundamental principles were known from the same law. This was a great mistake. First of all, we must observe that all proper mathematical judgments are a priori and not empirical, because they carry with them necessity, which cannot be obtained from experience. But if this be not conceded to me, very good, I shall confine myself to pure mathematics, the very notion which implies that it contains pure a priori. And here we have the 7 plus. I'm only going to read down to page 40 here, and then I'm going to end. But anyway, it might at first be thought that the proposition 7 plus 5 equals 12 is a mere analytical judgment, following the concept of the sum of 7 and 5 according to the law of contradiction. So we're basing it on the sum. But on closer examination, it appears that the concept of the sum 7 plus 5 merely contains their union in a single number, without its being a thought what the peculiar number is that unites them. The concept of 12 is by no means thought by merely thinking the combination of 7 and 5. And analysis this possible sum as we may, we shall not discover 12 in the concept. We must go beyond these concepts by calling to our aid some concrete image, Anschauung, i.e. either our 5 fingers or 5 points, as Stirner has it in arithmetic, and we must add successively the units of 5 given in some concrete image to the concept. Hence our concept is really amplified by the proposition 7 plus 5 equals 12, and we add the first, a second, not taught in it. Arithmetical judgments are therefore synthetical, and the more plainly according as we take larger numbers. For in such cases, it is clear that, however closely we analyze our concepts without calling visual images to our aid, we can never find the sum by such mere dissection. All principles of geometry are no less analytical. That a straight line is the shortest path between 2 points is a synthetical proposition. For my concept of straight contains nothing of quantity, but only of quality. The attribute of shortness is therefore altogether additional and cannot be obtained by an analysis of the concept. Here too, visualization and showing must come to aid us. It alone makes the synthesis possible. Some other principles assumed by geometers are indeed actually analytical and depend on the law of contradiction, but they only serve as identical propositions, as a method of concatenation and not as a principle. And yet even these, though they are recognized as valid from mere concepts, are only admitted in mathematics because they can be represented in some visual form. What usually makes us believe that they predicate of such apodictic judgments is already contained in our concept, and that the judgment is therefore analytical, is the duplicity of the expression, requesting us to think a certain predicate as a necessity implied in the thought of a given concept, which necessity attaches to the concept. But the question is not what we are requested to join in thought to given concept, but what we actually think together with and in it, though obscurely, and to it appears that the predicate belongs to these concepts necessarily, indeed, yet not directly, but indirectly, by an added visualization. Okay, so 39, 38 to 40 really are so important because Kant is writing so densely. Okay, so what we'll do is I'm going to write some notes up on this, and we will see. So this goes 38. Yeah. Yeah. So it goes all the way down 38 to 49. I might just even focus on that. Let me think about this, and next time we'll do some more reading. Okay, take care.